Be me a few years back. Technical sales role at a mid-tier B2B outfit. We dealt in heavy-duty enterprise software, the kind that quietly keeps factories humming and supply chains from collapsing. Not flashy, not headline material, but the commission checks made it worth the grind and the deals required actual brainpower. Our sales crew was lean but lethal. Just three of us, yet most of the company's revenue flowed through our pipeline. Then there was Ozzy, late 40s, company lifer, practically part of the furniture. He didn't just know clients. He knew their routines, their families, their habits. When a customer was ready to torch a contract worth 8 figures, Ozzy could dial in, talk for 10 minutes, and somehow turn the temperature down. His real leverage wasn't persuasion, it was credibility. In a space where one bad move costs millions, people believed he wouldn't burn them. And that belief carried everything. Then there was Austin. He was the hunter. A younger guy, maybe late 20s, impossibly charismatic. He could cold call a CEO and have a meeting scheduled by the end of the conversation. He was the one who brought in new blood, broke into new markets. He was pure, unfiltered social engineering in a well-fitted suit. He could make people feel like buying our software was their own brilliant idea. And then there was me. I'm Eric, the nerd, the brain. My job was to understand our software inside and out. Every line of code, every potential integration, every obscure bug. When a client had a technical question, Ozzy or Austin would patch me in. When we needed to build a custom solution for a new factory, I was the one who designed the architecture. I made the complicated stuff simple. I was the bridge between the sales pitch and the reality of the code. We worked together seamlessly. Austin would find a lead, Ozzy would nurture the relationship, and I would handle the technical deep dive to prove we were the best solution. We never stepped on each other's toes. We trusted each other's expertise. The CEO was a typical numbers guy. As long as our revenue chart went up and to the right, he left us alone. He didn't understand what we did, not really. But he understood the results. Life was good. The work was demanding, but we were rewarded for our competence. It was a true meritocracy. If you performed, you got paid. If you didn't, you were gone. Simple. This perfect system was about to come crashing down. It all started when the company decided we needed to modernize our corporate culture. That was the phrase in the all-hands email. Modernize. This modernization came in the form of a new head of human resources. Her name was Cora. She was introduced at a company-wide meeting. Young, probably just out of business school, with that specific brand of unearned confidence that comes from reading a lot of textbooks, but having zero real-world experience. She got up on stage and gave a speech full of all the right buzzwords: synergy, paradigm shifts, fostering inclusivity, creating safe spaces, deconstructing legacy power structures. It was like a corporate jargon generator had come to life. Most of the company just clapped politely, happy to get back to their desks. But our team exchanged a look. There was something in the way she kept glancing over at our corner of the room, where the three of us sat. It wasn't a friendly look. It was the look of a biologist studying an invasive species. Her first official act was to send out a company-wide cultural assessment survey. The questions were incredibly leading. On a scale of 1 to 5, do you feel that our company's highest-earning roles are occupied by a sufficiently diverse group of individuals? Rate your level of comfort with the work hard, play hard mentality often found in commission-based departments. Do you feel that assertive negotiation tactics in our sales division create a hostile or overly competitive environment? It was obvious what this was. It wasn't a survey to gather information. It was a tool to create a narrative. She was building a case against us from day one. We all answered honestly, focusing on performance and results. But we knew it didn't matter. A few weeks later, the one-on-one meetings started. She called in everyone, department by department. When it was my turn, I went into her office. It was sterile, minimalist, with a single frame poster on the wall that just said, "Empower." She smiled, but it was a thin, predatory smile that didn't reach her eyes. The meeting wasn't about me. It was about my team. She didn't ask about my performance, my goals, or my needs as an employee. The questions were all about Ozzy and Austin. She asked if I ever felt pressured by Ozzy's old-school approach to business. She asked if Austin's aggressive style ever made me uncomfortable. She described our team's dynamic as a classic boys' club and asked if I felt I had to conform to a certain type of masculinity to fit in. I told her the truth. I told her Ozzy was the best mentor I'd ever had. I told her Austin's drive pushed us all to be better. I told her we weren't a boys' club. We were a professional team that respected each other's skills. She just nodded slowly, typing on her laptop, that same cold smile plastered on her face. It was clear she wasn't listening. She was just checking boxes. Ozzy and Austin told me they had almost identical meetings. She was trying to get one of us to crack, to give her some ammunition she could use against the others. We were a unit, though. We didn't play that game. The atmosphere in the office began to change. People from other departments who used to be friendly started acting distant. The easy conversations in the break room stopped when one of us walked in. We were being isolated, painted as the villains of the company narrative. Cora started holding mandatory sensitivity training workshops. They were always focused on themes of privilege, unconscious bias, and toxic masculinity. During one workshop, the facilitator, a consultant Cora had hired, put up a slide about dominant communication styles. It listed things like being direct, focusing on data, and results-oriented language as examples of toxic workplace behavior. It was a direct description of how our sales team operated, how any successful sales team operates. Cora made sure to make eye contact with me from across the room as that slide was being discussed. It was a power move, a deliberate message. The goal wasn't to improve the company culture. The goal was to pathologize competence, to frame our success as a moral failing. The next phase of her plan was more direct. She started analyzing our compensation. Our pay structure was simple: a low base salary and a high uncapped commission. We earned what we killed. On a good year, we made a lot of money, more than anyone else in the company, including the CEO. This was a problem for Cora, not a financial problem for the company. Our commissions were a fraction of the massive revenue we generated. It was an ideological problem. In her worldview, it was an injustice for a team of 3 men to be the highest earners. It didn't fit her narrative of equity. She prepared a presentation for the CEO. We found out about it later from a sympathetic source in the finance department. She took our total earnings, base plus commission, and presented it as our salary. She put it on a bar chart next to the fixed salaries of other employees, many of whom were women. The visual was shocking, taken out of context. It made it look like we were being grotesquely overpaid for no reason. She completely ignored the revenue side of the equation. She didn't show the chart of the millions of dollars we brought in, which was the direct source of our commissions. She framed it as a wage gap issue within the company. She told the CEO that our team was a relic of a patriarchal past. She said our high earnings were demoralizing for other employees and created a toxic culture of elitism. Her solution was simple: fire us. She claimed she could hire a new team, a diverse and modern team, for a fraction of the cost. She insisted that our client relationships were with the company, not with us as individuals. She promised that sales would remain stable, and the money saved on our inflated commissions could be reinvested in equity initiatives. The CEO was weak. He was a follower, not a leader. He was terrified of bad PR, of being labeled as problematic or old-fashioned. He saw Cora's presentation not as a business plan, but as a get-out-of-jail-free card for any potential cultural criticism. He bought it, hook, line, and sinker. We had no idea this was happening behind the scenes. We just knew the pressure was mounting. Then came the day. We all received a calendar invitation for a meeting in the main conference room. The title was just Business Update. The attendees were us, the CEO, and Cora. We knew immediately. This was it. We walked into the conference room. The CEO was already there, sitting at the head of the table, staring at his hands. He wouldn't look at us. Cora was standing by the window, looking out at the city. She turned as we came in, and for the first time, her smile was genuine. It was a smile of pure triumph. We sat down. The air was thick with tension. The CEO cleared his throat and started talking. He mumbled some corporate nonsense about strategic realignment and entering a new phase of growth. He couldn't even say the words. He kept stumbling, looking to Cora for help. She finally stepped in, cutting him off. She stood in front of us, hands clasped, like a judge about to deliver a verdict. She told us that the company was moving in a new direction, a direction that valued collaboration over competition and equity over individual achievement. She said that as part of this new direction, our roles were being eliminated, effective immediately. There was a moment of stunned silence. Ozzy spoke first. He wasn't angry. He was just disappointed. He looked past Cora, directly at the CEO. He started talking about our clients. He mentioned the Henderson account, a 20-year relationship that he'd personally saved from collapsing just a month prior. He mentioned the new manufacturing giant Austin had just signed, a deal that would be the company's biggest ever. He talked about the custom software build I was in the middle of designing for our largest client. He asked the CEO, who is going to handle that? These people don't just buy software, they buy a partnership. They buy us. The CEO just shrank in his chair. Cora stepped forward again. Her voice was cold as ice. The company is confident that our clients will appreciate our new commitment to diversity and modern values, she said. No single employee is irreplaceable. That was the line, the sheer arrogance and ignorance of it. Austin just laughed, a short, bitter laugh. You have no idea what you're doing, he said. Cora's face hardened. You'll be provided with standard severance packages. Your personal belongings will be packed and couriered to you. Your network access has already been revoked. Security will escort you from the building. And that was it. After years of record-breaking performance, of building this company's revenue stream from the ground up, we were being thrown out like trash. Not for failing, but for succeeding too much. For being the wrong gender in the wrong role at the wrong time, according to the wrong person's ideology. We didn't say another word. We stood up and walked out. As we were being escorted out by a security guard who looked genuinely embarrassed, we passed the sales floor. Through the glass walls, we could see Cora addressing the rest of the company. She was animated, smiling, probably announcing her great victory over the patriarchy that had been holding the company back. We walked out of that building for the last time, into the afternoon sun. We didn't talk for a few minutes. We just stood on the sidewalk, the noise of the city buzzing around us. Finally, Ozzy clapped us both on the shoulder. Well, boys, he said, a grim smile on his face, I think it's time for a beer. We found a quiet bar a few blocks away. We sat there, nursing our drinks, the reality of the situation slowly sinking in. It wasn't just about losing a job, it was the injustice of it all, the feeling of being betrayed by a company we had given so much to. We weren't angry, not really. We were past that. It was a strange sense of disillusionment, the realization that competence, loyalty, and results didn't matter anymore. All that mattered were optics and ideology. We started making calls, to recruiters, to contacts at other companies. Our reputations were solid. We knew we would land on our feet. The question was, would the company we just left do the same? Ozzy was certain it wouldn't. He explained that our key clients were boomers, old-school business guys. They didn't care about corporate values or inclusivity initiatives. They cared about whether their multi-million-dollar operations would grind to a halt because of a software bug. They cared about getting a straight answer from someone they trusted at 2 a.m. on a Sunday. They're not going to talk to some HR drone, Ozzy said, swirling his beer. They're going to call my cell. And when I tell them I don't work there anymore, all hell is going to break loose. We spent the rest of the afternoon there, planning our next moves, trying to make sense of the absurdity of it all. As we were about to leave, Austin's phone buzzed. It was a text from a friend still at the company. He read it out loud. Cora just introduced the new sales team. It's 3 junior marketing assistants who've never made a sales call in their lives. Good luck, guys. We looked at each other, and for the first time that day, we all started to laugh. It was the laugh of men who knew they were watching someone confidently light the fuse on a bomb they were sitting on. We had no idea how fast it was about to explode. The next morning felt strange. Waking up without the immediate pressure of a dozen client issues was liberating, but also unsettling. It was the first weekday in years I didn't have a job. I made some coffee and sat on my balcony, figuring I'd spend the day updating my resume and browsing job boards. Around 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a group chat Ozzy had just created for the 3 of us. The first message was from Ozzy. And so it begins. Attached was a screenshot of his call log. He'd already had 3 missed calls from a number I recognized instantly. It belonged to the main office of Henderson Manufacturing, our oldest and most demanding client. A minute later, Austin chimed in. Getting text from the new lead at AeroCorp, asking why my calendar invite for the final pitch was just canceled by someone named Jessica. It was starting even faster than we'd thought. We decided to meet at Ozzy's house. It felt like we needed a war room. I got there around 10:30. Ozzy was in his home office, his personal cell phone on speaker. The voice coming out of it was panicked and angry. It was Mr. Henderson himself, the CEO. Ozzy was calm, listening patiently as Henderson ranted. Apparently, one of their main production lines had gone down overnight due to a software glitch. It was a rare but critical bug I was already working on a patch for. Henderson had followed standard procedure and called their dedicated support line, but no one could help him. He demanded to speak to me, Eric, and was told I no longer worked there. "What do you mean you don't work there, Ozzy?" Henderson was yelling. "You've been my guy for 20 years. I don't have a contract with your company, I have a contract with you." That was it. The single sentence that Cora and the CEO had failed to understand. The business wasn't about software licenses. It was about trust. Ozzy let him vent for another minute, then spoke in that impossibly soothing tone of his. He explained, without any malice, that the company was undergoing a management change and that our positions had been eliminated. He didn't badmouth anyone. He was a professional to the end. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "So, let me get this straight," Henderson said, his voice dangerously low. "The 3 people who actually know how my multi-million-dollar facility runs have all been fired? And they've been replaced by who, exactly?" Ozzy just said, "You'd have to ask their new head of HR about that." "Unbelievable," Henderson muttered. "I'm pulling the contract. My lawyers will be in touch." Ozzy calmly wished him the best and ended the call. He looked at me and Austin. "That's one," he said. "Probably $12 million a year in recurring revenue, gone." The calls kept coming all day. We sat there as Ozzy's phone became the company's unofficial and entirely unanswered crisis hotline. A client from Canada called because they couldn't get a new installation to authenticate with their servers. That was my territory. I knew their setup by heart. A logistics company in Texas called because a recent update was causing reporting errors, and they were about to face massive fines. Austin had closed that deal. With every call, Ozzy gave the same calm, professional speech, and with every call, we could hear the sound of another multi-million-dollar deal turning to dust. Meanwhile, we were getting updates from our inside source, a guy in accounting who was enjoying the chaos. He was texting Austin a running commentary. 11 a.m. The new sales team is trying to read your technical manuals. They look like they're trying to decipher ancient hieroglyphs. 12:30 p.m. Cora just held a pep talk. Told them the client pushback is a manifestation of systemic bias and to stay strong in their convictions. 1:45 p.m. One of the new girls, Jessica, just took a call from the Henderson account. I could hear him screaming from across the room. She started crying and hung up. The image was just too perfect. This new age corporate warrior who thought business was about buzzwords and feelings, being confronted by the raw, unfiltered reality of a pissed-off client losing thousands of dollars a minute. The real comedy began around 2 p.m. Our source sent another text. "You are not going to believe this. Cora is getting on the phones herself. She's going to personally handle the client relationships." This was the moment we were waiting for. Austin put his feet up on Ozzy's coffee table. "Oh, please, please let there be a recording of this." We didn't get a recording, but we got the next best thing. Around 2:30, Ozzy's phone rang again. It was a number he didn't recognize, but it had a Chicago area code. He picked it up. It was a guy named Frank, the head of operations at a steel plant we'd signed 6 months prior. He was a no-nonsense old-school factory boss, and he was absolutely livid. He said he'd just been on the phone with some lady from HR who had no idea what she was talking about. He recounted the conversation for us. He'd called to report a critical data sync issue. Instead of getting help, he got Cora. She had apparently introduced herself as the Director of People and Culture and had assured him that she was empowered to facilitate a solution-oriented dialogue. Frank had just asked her, "Can you fix the damn software or not?" According to Frank, Cora had then tried to lecture him about his aggressive tone and how the company was building a culture of respectful communication. He'd asked her a simple technical question about database permissions. She had responded by asking him if he felt his frustration was rooted in the challenge of adapting to a female-led operational paradigm. Frank had lost it. "I told her I don't care if she's a man, a woman, or a goddamn Martian," Frank told Ozzy. "I care that my furnaces are about to shut down because her company's software is a piece of crap." Then she had the nerve to tell me to check my privilege. "I run a steel mill in Gary, Indiana. What privilege is she talking about?" He was so angry he was practically spitting through the phone. He ended the call by telling Ozzy he was invoking the breach of contract clause for failure to provide adequate support, and was switching to our biggest competitor that afternoon. When Ozzy hung up, the three of us were silent for a moment. It was a masterpiece of incompetence, a perfect storm of ideological nonsense crashing against the rocks of the real world. Cora wasn't just failing to solve problems. She was actively pouring gasoline on the fire with her sanctimonious, condescending jargon. The final update from our source came in just before 4 p.m. CEO just came out of his office. He looks like he's seen a ghost. The revenue dashboard is blinking red like a Christmas tree. He walked over to Cora's desk and just screamed, "Fix it!" She started talking about long-term cultural gains, and he screamed, "I'm going to have long-term unemployment if you don't fix this now." The power dynamic had shifted. The fear of being unwoke was gone, replaced by the primal terror of a man watching his career evaporate in real time. We decided to call it a day. We'd seen enough. We went out for a steak dinner to celebrate our first day of freedom. We talked about starting our own consulting firm. We had the client list, the expertise, and the reputation. We could probably rebuild our old portfolio in 6 months. The next morning, I slept in. Around 11 a.m., my phone rang. It was Ozzy. "It's time," he said. "What's time?" I asked. "The call, the CEO. He just texted me. We need to talk. Urgent." I met them back at Ozzy's house. We huddled in his office like it was a presidential briefing. We let him wait for about an hour. Then, Ozzy texted back a simple, "I can talk now." Not 30 seconds later, the phone rang. Ozzy put it on speaker. The voice on the other end was unrecognizable. It was the CEO, but all the bluster and confidence were gone. He sounded like a man who had been awake for 48 hours straight, living on coffee and pure panic. He started with a pathetic, rambling apology. He talked about making a terrible mistake and being misled by a new corporate philosophy. He never mentioned Cora by name, but it was obvious. He said the company was in a state of emergency. They'd had over a dozen major clients either pull their contracts or threaten to do so. The financial loss was already in the 8 figures. The board of directors was calling for his head. Then came the groveling. "I need you back," he pleaded. "All 3 of you. Name your price. Anything. I'll give you anything." Ozzy let the silence hang in the air for a good 10 seconds. It felt like an eternity. Then he said, in a perfectly level, professional tone, "We will need some time to consider this. We will prepare a proposal and get back to you by the end of the day." The CEO started to protest, saying they didn't have until the end of the day. Ozzy cut him off. "This is a negotiation for the future of your company. We're not going to rush it. You'll hear from us." And he hung up. We spent the next 2 hours crafting our terms. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about setting things right in a way that could never be undone. Our list of demands was short, simple, and non-negotiable. First, the financials. We didn't ask for a raise. We demanded new titles. We would be co-directors of a newly formed strategic accounts division. Our compensation would be a significantly higher base salary, plus an even larger commission percentage. And most importantly, we wanted 3-year ironclad contracts. It would be prohibitively expensive to fire us, no matter who the next HR director was. Second, the apology. The CEO would have to send out a company-wide email, written by us, admitting that the decision to terminate our employment was a catastrophic error in judgment based on flawed and ideologically motivated advice. He had to acknowledge that our success was due to merit and expertise, and that the company's attempt to replace us had resulted in immediate and severe financial and reputational damage. It was pure, unadulterated humiliation, and it had to be public. Third, the main event. Cora, She was to be terminated, effective immediately, for cause citing gross incompetence and actions leading to significant financial loss. And the three of us were to be present in the room when it happened. Those were the terms. All or nothing. Ozzy called the CEO back in the late afternoon. He didn't present it as a list of demands. He presented it as a solution to the crisis. He read the terms one by one in a calm, dispassionate voice. We could hear the CEO breathing on the other end. He was silent for a long time. We knew he was weighing his career against his pride. His career won. "Agreed," he whispered, "to all of it. Just, please, come in tomorrow morning." 9 a.m. The next morning, we walked back into that building. It was a completely different experience. The security guard who had escorted us out now held the door open for us, a look of awe on his face. As we walked through the office, people stopped what they were doing and stared. The whispers followed us. We weren't the pariahs anymore. We were the guys who had brought the company to its knees and were now coming back to save it. The power shift was palpable. We went straight to the conference room. The CEO was already there, looking 10 years older. He had copies of our new contracts on the table. We read them carefully. Everything was there, exactly as we had demanded. We signed. "Now, for the final piece of business," Ozzy said, sliding the contracts back to the CEO. The CEO picked up his desk phone and pressed a button. "Could you send Cora to the main conference room, please?" A minute later, she walked in. She was smiling, that same smug, self-satisfied smile. She probably thought she was being brought in for a strategy session on how to handle the crisis she'd created. Then she saw us. Sitting at the table, the smile vanished. Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks. The gears were turning in her head, the reality of the situation crashing down on her. She looked from us to the CEO and back again. "What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The CEO, for the first time, looked her directly in the eye. His face was a mask of cold fury. All his fear and weakness had been burned away, replaced by the anger of a man who had almost lost everything. "Cora," he began, his voice flat and devoid of emotion, "we are terminating your employment with this company, effective immediately." She just stared at him, speechless. He continued, picking up a piece of paper. "Your tenure has been characterized by a catastrophic failure to understand our business operations. Your ideologically driven personnel decisions have directly resulted in the loss of multiple key accounts, causing immediate and ongoing financial damages in the tens of millions of dollars. You have proven yourself to be grossly incompetent in your role." She found her voice. It came out as a squeak at first, then rose to a shriek. "You can't do this," she screamed. "This is retaliation. This is misogyny. I'll sue you. I'll sue all of you." Ozzy, Austin, and I didn't say a word. We just sat there and watched. The CEO wasn't fazed. "Our legal department is fully prepared for that possibility," he said calmly. "They have compiled a comprehensive file documenting the precise timeline of your actions and the corresponding financial losses. We are confident in our position." He gestured to the door, where 2 security guards had quietly appeared. "You will be escorted from the building. Any personal items will be shipped to you. Do not attempt to contact any of our employees or clients." She stood there, frozen, her face a mess of rage and disbelief. Her entire worldview, where she was the hero and we were the villains, had been shattered in an instant. She had been so sure she was on the right side of history. But history, it turned out, was written by the people who could actually do the job. She opened her mouth to scream again, but one of the guards took a step forward and she seemed to shrink. The fight went out of her. She was just a scared, defeated person who had flown too close to the sun on wings made of buzzwords. They walked her out of the room. Her final act at the company was to be frog-marched past the entire office she had tried and failed to remake in her own image. It was a humiliating, public spectacle. It was justice. When she was gone, the CEO slumped in his chair. He looked at us. "The company-wide email will go out in 5 minutes," he said quietly. "Your new offices are being prepared. Please, go save my company." We stood up and walked out of the conference room. We didn't look back. We walked back onto the sales floor. Our old desks were waiting. The pathetic, wilted plants of the new team had already been cleared away. We sat down, the phones were ringing. Ozzy picked up his headset. I could hear his side of the conversation. Yes, Mr. Henderson, I'm back. No, I understand your frustration. Of course. Give me 1 hour and my technical director will have a patch deployed for you. He looked at me and winked. I logged into the system. It felt like coming home. I pulled up the code for the Henderson bug. Across from me, Austin was already on a call, his voice full of that old, familiar charisma, laughing with someone on the other end. The chaos was over. Order was being restored. The machine was running again.